Men actually become more distant and awkward when greeting women they're genuinely interested in, not more charming like everyone assumes. I know this sounds backwards, but stick with me because what I'm about to reveal will change how you read male behavior forever. Most dating advice tells you that interested men become smooth talkers, confident flirts, or overly attentive when they like someone. But after studying thousands of interactions and diving deep into evolutionary psychology research, I've discovered something fascinating. The exact opposite is true. When a man is secretly attracted to a woman, his greeting behavior actually becomes more restrained, more careful, and yes, sometimes even more awkward than his normal interactions. This isn't weakness or lack of confidence, it's biology. And once you understand these hidden patterns, you'll never misread a man's intentions again. Because here's what no one talks about. When the stakes feel higher, men don't become bolder. They become more strategic, more protective of their ego, and more afraid of ruining their chances before they even get started. So if you've ever wondered why that guy who seems so confident with everyone else suddenly gets weird around you, or why the man who jokes freely with other women becomes formally polite in your presence, you're about to get answers that will blow your mind. And if you're finding this breakdown as eye-opening as I think you will, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe because I love diving deep into the psychology behind attraction and human behavior that most people completely miss. Let me ask you this. Have you ever noticed how some men become almost too respectful when they greet you, like they're handling fragile glass, while other guys are casual, joking around, maybe even a little inappropriate with their hellos, but this particular man suddenly becomes Mr. Perfect Gentleman? That's not random behavior. That's attraction psychology at work. And it reveals everything about how his mind is processing you as more than just another person in his social circle. The truth is, when a man feels genuine attraction, his brain activates what researchers call mate value assessment mode. Suddenly, you're not just someone to interact with casually, you're someone he could potentially lose, someone whose opinion of him matters more than he wants to admit. And this shift creates a fascinating paradox. The more he likes you, the more careful he becomes about not screwing up that first impression. This is why traditional dating advice gets it so wrong. We're told to look for increased attention, bold moves, confident body language. But real attraction, especially in men, often manifests as the opposite. It shows up as hesitation over politeness and what looks like disinterest, but is actually hyper-awareness of every word, every gesture, every micro-expression you might have in response to his greeting. Studies in behavioral psychology show that when men encounter women they're genuinely attracted to, their stress hormones actually spike. Not because they're scared, but because their subconscious recognizes that this interaction has higher stakes than usual. And high stakes situations don't make us more smooth. They make us more careful, more deliberate, more likely to second guess our natural instincts. Here's where it gets really interesting. Men have been socially conditioned to believe that showing too much interest too early is a mistake. They've been taught that being too eager is unattractive, that playing it cool is the winning strategy. So when a man encounters a woman who triggers genuine interest, his greeting behavior often becomes a careful dance between showing enough warmth to be friendly and maintaining enough distance to avoid seeming desperate or overly invested. This creates greeting patterns that are completely different from how he interacts with women he sees as just friends or colleagues. The casual confidence disappears. The easy jokes might stop flowing. Instead, you get something more measured, more thoughtful, and yes, sometimes more awkward. But this awkwardness isn't a bug in the system. It's a feature. It's his brain telling him that you matter more than the average person he encounters. Now, before I dive into the specific greeting behaviors that reveal secret attraction, I want to address something crucial. These patterns aren't universal rules that apply to every man in every situation. Personality, cultural background, past experiences, and individual confidence levels all play a role. But what I'm sharing with you are the most common patterns that emerge when you study male behavior across large populations and various social contexts. The research on this is fascinating. Anthropologists have found that in most cultures, men display what's called courtship nervousness around women they perceive as potential romantic partners. This nervousness doesn't look like shaking hands or stuttering speech. Instead, it manifests as hyper-controlled behavior, over-politeness, and what appears to be emotional distance, but is actually emotional protection. Think about it from an evolutionary perspective. For thousands of years, men who were too forward too quickly with women they valued risked rejection, social embarrassment, or even conflict with other males. The men who survived and passed on their genes were often those who learned to be strategic about revealing their interest. This caution is still hardwired into male behavior today, especially in those crucial first interactions. So when you're trying to figure out if a man's greeting reveals secret attraction, you're not looking for obvious signs of interest. You're looking for signs of elevated importance. You're looking for behavior that suggests you've been mentally categorized differently from other women in his social sphere. You're looking for the subtle ways his body language and verbal patterns shift when his subconscious recognizes that this interaction could potentially matter more than he wants it to. This brings us to the first major greeting pattern that reveals secret male attraction, the formal upgrade. Most men have a default casual greeting style with people they know. Maybe it's a simple hey, a quick hug, or some kind of inside joke or reference. But when a man is secretly attracted to a woman, his greeting often becomes noticeably more formal and polite than his norm. He might switch from hey to hello or good morning. His posture becomes straighter. His voice might drop slightly or become more measured. He's unconsciously upgrading his presentation because his brain has categorized you as someone whose opinion matters more. This isn't fake politeness. It's instinctive respect born from attraction. The key detail to watch for is the contrast with how he greets other people. If he's casual and joking with everyone else, but becomes notably more proper with you, that shift is significant. His subconscious is treating you as someone special, someone worth his best behavior, someone he doesn't want to accidentally offend or turn off with overfamiliarity. The second pattern is what I call the extended eye contact hesitation. When men greet women they're not particularly interested in, the eye contact is usually brief and functional, just enough to be polite, then they look away naturally. But when a man is attracted to a woman, something interesting happens with his gaze pattern during greetings. He'll make eye contact, but then there's a microsecond hesitation before he looks away. It's like his brain wants to keep looking, but his social programming tells him not to stare. This creates a brief moment where you can almost see the internal conflict playing out. He might look at you, glance away, then look back again quickly as if checking your reaction to his greeting. This isn't the confident, sustained eye contact that dating advice often talks about. This is something more vulnerable and revealing. It's the eye contact of someone who's genuinely interested in your response to him, but doesn't want to appear too obvious about it. The hesitation reveals that looking at you feels different than looking at other people, and he's not quite sure how to handle that difference. The third pattern is the conversation extension attempt. When a man greets a woman he's not particularly interested in, the greeting serves its social function and then it's over. They exchange hellos, maybe a brief "how are you?" and then both parties naturally move on with their day. But when a man is attracted to a woman, his greeting behavior often includes subtle attempts to extend the interaction beyond its natural endpoint. This might look like asking follow-up questions that aren't really necessary for the social situation. How was your weekend? Followed immediately by "what did you end up doing?" when normally he would have stopped at the first question. Or making observations about things in the environment that create opportunities for you to respond, "This weather has been crazy lately, hasn't it?" Or "that's an interesting book you're reading." These conversation extension attempts are his way of buying more time in your presence without having to be direct about wanting to talk to you longer. His subconscious is looking for any socially acceptable reason to prolong the interaction, hoping maybe you'll give him signals about your interest level or openings for deeper conversation. The fourth pattern is what researchers call mirroring delay. Normally, when people greet each other, there's an unconscious mirroring that happens almost immediately. If one person smiles, the other smiles back within milliseconds. If someone extends their hand, the response is automatic and quick. But when a man is attracted to a woman, this mirroring often has a slight delay. He's not slower to respond because he's disinterested. He's slower because he's processing more information. His brain is analyzing your facial expression, your tone, your body language for any hints about how you feel about seeing him. This extra processing time creates a brief lag in his responses that can sometimes be mistaken for awkwardness or disinterest. But here's the crucial detail. Once he does mirror your greeting energy, he often matches it more precisely than he would with other people. If you smile warmly, his eventual smile tends to be equally warm. If your greeting is more reserved, he calibrates his response accordingly. This careful calibration is a sign that he's paying closer attention to your emotional state than he normally would. The fifth pattern is voice modification. Men's voices naturally change slightly when they're talking to women they find attractive, but it's not always the deeper, more seductive voice that popular culture talks about. Sometimes it's the opposite. When greeting a woman he's secretly interested in, a man might speak more softly, more carefully, with better articulation than usual. This happens because attraction activates a part of the male brain that wants to present the best possible version of himself. Just like he might stand up straighter or check his appearance before an important meeting, his voice automatically adjusts when greeting someone whose opinion matters to him. The change might be subtle, but it's often noticeable if you know what to listen for. Some men go in the opposite direction, speaking slightly louder or more confidently than normal, but even this is a form of voice modification that reveals elevated stakes. The key is that his greeting voice sounds different than his normal conversational voice with other people. Any deviation from his baseline vocal patterns suggests that greeting you feels different than greeting others. Now, here's where most people get tripped up when trying to interpret these signals. They assume that attraction should make men more confident and forward, so they misread these careful, measured behaviors as disinterest. But understanding male psychology means recognizing that genuine attraction often makes men more cautious, not more bold, especially in the early stages. This caution isn't insecurity, it's strategy. Men intuitively understand that coming on too strong too early can backfire, so they often err on the side of being too subtle rather than too obvious. The problem is that this subtlety can be so subtle that women miss it entirely and assume the man isn't interested. The sixth pattern is gesture restraint. Men who are comfortable and casual around women often use broader hand gestures, more relaxed body positioning, and generally take up more space when greeting. But when a man is attracted to a woman, his greeting gestures often become more contained and controlled. He might keep his hands closer to his body, avoid gestures that could be seen as too familiar or presumptuous, and present a more composed version of himself. This isn't nervousness in the traditional sense. It's conscious restraint born from not wanting to do anything that might be misinterpreted or create the wrong impression. You might notice that his handshake lasts just a moment longer than strictly necessary, but his hand position is perfectly appropriate, or that he maintains slightly more physical distance than he does with other people, not because he doesn't want to be near you, but because he's hyper aware of respecting your personal space. The seventh pattern is what I call information gathering disguised as small talk. When men greet women they're not interested in romantically, their small talk tends to be genuinely casual and surface level. But when a man is attracted to a woman, his greeting small talk often serves a dual purpose, being socially appropriate while also gathering information about your life, your mood, your availability, your interests. His questions might seem casual, but they're actually strategic. How was your weekend? Isn't just politeness. He's trying to understand what you do with your free time. That coffee smells amazing. Where did you get it? Isn't just friendly observation. He's gathering information about your preferences and routines. You seem really happy today isn't just a compliment. He's testing whether you'll share what's making you happy. This information gathering is usually subtle and feels natural within the conversation, but it reveals that he's thinking about you as more than just someone to exchange pleasantries with. He's unconsciously collecting data that might be useful for future interactions or conversations. The eighth pattern is compliment hesitation. This one is particularly revealing because it goes against what most people expect. When a man is attracted to a woman, he often wants to compliment her but hesitates because he doesn't want to seem too obvious or inappropriate. This creates a fascinating behavioral pattern during greetings. You might notice him start to say something, then stop himself. Or he might give a very safe, non-personal compliment when his body language suggests he wanted to say something more specific. You look nice today, when his expression suggests he thinks you look absolutely stunning. That's a great shirt, when he clearly noticed something more comprehensive about your appearance. This hesitation happens because his brain is running a rapid risk assessment calculation. He wants to express his positive impression of you, but he doesn't want to cross any lines or reveal too much about his level of interest. The result is often compliments that feel slightly awkward or incomplete, not because he doesn't mean them, but because he's editing himself in real time. The ninth pattern is departure delay. Just as men who are attracted often try to extend the greeting conversation, they also tend to delay the natural end of the greeting interaction. When it's socially appropriate for the greeting to conclude and both parties to move on, a man who's interested will often find small ways to extend his presence just a few moments longer. This might look like remembering one more thing to say just as you're both about to walk away, or taking a slightly slower pace when you're walking in the same direction after the greeting, or finding a reason to adjust something with his appearance or belongings that keeps him in your vicinity for an extra few seconds. These delays are usually brief and subtle, but they reveal that ending the interaction with you feels different than ending interactions with other people. His subconscious is reluctant to close the door on this social opportunity, even if consciously he knows the greeting is over. The 10th and perhaps most revealing pattern is energy mismatch recovery. This is when a man's initial greeting energy doesn't quite match the situation or your energy, and then he quickly adjusts. For example, if you greet him with casual friendliness, but his initial response is more formal than the moment calls for, he might quickly shift to match your energy level. This recovery behavior shows that he's paying careful attention to your social cues and wants to calibrate his approach to what works best for you. Men don't usually put this much effort into energy matching unless the interaction matters to them more than usual. The key is watching for these quick recalibrations during the greeting. If he starts with one energy level and then adjusts based on your response, it suggests he's more invested in getting the interaction right than he would be with someone he saw as just a casual acquaintance. Now, here's the crucial part that most people miss when trying to apply this information. Context is everything. A single greeting behavior doesn't tell you much. But when you start noticing multiple patterns consistently over several interactions, that's when you can begin to draw more reliable conclusions about his level of interest. Also, remember that some men are naturally more reserved or formal in their communication style, while others are naturally more casual and expressive. The key is looking for deviations from his normal patterns, not comparing his behavior to some universal standard of how men should act when they're interested. If you're starting to recognize some of these patterns in a man's greeting behavior toward you, the question becomes, how should you respond? The most important thing is not to dramatically change your own behavior or suddenly become hyper aware of every greeting interaction. That kind of overthinking can actually interfere with natural chemistry and connection. Instead, if you're interested in him as well, you can subtly signal your openness through your own greeting patterns. Make eye contact that lasts just a moment longer than strictly necessary, Ask follow-up questions that show you're engaged in the conversation. Use his name during the greeting, which creates a sense of personal connection. If you're not interested romantically, you can keep your greeting behavior consistently friendly but not overly encouraging. The goal is clarity without cruelty. You don't need to be cold or distant, but you also don't want to accidentally send mixed signals that might encourage him to misread your politeness as romantic interest. The fascinating thing about understanding these male greeting patterns is that it often reveals how much mental and emotional energy men put into interactions with women they find attractive, even when they're trying to play it cool or act uninterested. That careful politeness, that measured conversation, that slight awkwardness isn't indifference. It's the exact opposite. It's evidence